Welcome to the Learning Can't Wait podcast, a Full Mind production. At Full Mind, our vision is to ensure every child has access to an exceptional education. Each episode, we will be joined by pathfinders within and around the education space who are bringing about transformational change on behalf of deserving students. I am your host, Haley Spierbauer. Welcome back, everybody, to the Learning Can't Wait podcast. I feel like today's guest is like longtime listener, first time caller. I love that we met through the podcast, and I'm so thrilled to introduce him. We are going to be interviewing today Sunil Gunderia, the Chief Innovation Officer at Age of Learning and a board member at Innovate EDU and Children's Institute. Sunil, welcome.
Hey, thank you, Haley. Really excited to be on the podcast. Appreciate all the work you do to make sure others' work is elevated and talked about in terms of what we can do in terms of systems transformation.
It's a big topic that we're going to tackle today, but you have really sold me on your passion and your consistent dedication to this work. And so I know my audience is really going to enjoy the conversation. And I'm going to start us off with our first question, which is a really interesting answer I know you have to give. How did you come to be the personal and professional version of yourself, Sunil?
Yeah, that is I guess an unlikely journey is the way I like to, or certainly a jagged journey, right? So I'm fortunate that I had parents that were educated. I'm a first generation immigrant from India. My parents were educated, really came to the U.S. with nothing, less than $50 in my dad's pocket when they immigrated, and you know we came with nothing and I followed the path with least resistance in terms of my mom was a teacher and my dad was an accountant, and I'm like, wow, accounting seems to pay really well, teaching not so much. So that's the track I'm going to take. And so I started my career in the South. I grew up in Georgia and followed my dad's path, became an accountant. I'm professionally certified as a CPA. What I got from that experience is really understanding the language of business, which underlies a lot of what we do. And when we think about systems, how systems are financed is really quite key. I moved from the work as a CPA into consulting, and the rationale for that is like working as an accountant. A lot of times you're giving you're certifying what somebody's already done, right? What I liked about consulting is like I wanted to be a part of a problem solver, and I wanted to be ahead of the conversation and really look at what we can do to make a difference to a business. And being that in those earlier conversations, I finished my MBA at USC. This was right around the time that the internet was launching, and I'm like, I got to do this. Like, this is the future. This is really interesting. It was at that time I got and I pursued, I mean, living in Los Angeles, working in the entertainment industry is like really attractive. And I'm like, wow, there's so much going on there. How is content and this new distribution platform going to work together? What is it going to mean? And so I got a job at the Walt Disney Company right at the turn of the century, and basically was put into an international role where I was doing strategy and finance that quickly evolved into looking at global markets and how internet technology was impacting them. I was very fortunate that we launched with iMode in Japan at that time, and that was really one of the first mobile platforms that was allowing users and allowing Disney's content to be consumed. And it was really simple back then. We're talking ringtones and screensavers, which was the early mobile days. And so I was promoted in 2004 to a role in Europe where they asked me to move, my family as well, where I started to start the mobile business for Disney in Europe. Over the next 8 years, we acquired two game studios. We expanded the business quite substantially. I ended up the global co-head of the mobile business for Disney. And what it gave me the opportunity to do is really work at the intersection of new technology and content, and how you deliver that content, not only from what we already have, but how do you use these new platforms from a user experience perspective to take advantage of all that they offer, and also looking at it from how is that experience different from what you might do on other platforms or traditional platforms. I stayed in Europe for 8 years and came back to the US in 2011, or I'm sorry, 2012. And really at that time, I was working with a lot of different startups that were looking into getting into mobile. And I would say the most transformative thing that had happened in my career was this random thing happened where I appeared on Doug Doring, who was our former CEO at Age of Learning. He's the founder and former CEO. His LinkedIn page as a person you should know. Uh, and he saw that I was connected to one of our board members, Sky Dayton, and he's like, "Hey, Sky, reach out to Sunil and see if there's a fit here." And within 2 weeks, I was working in Age of Learning and started this journey of education where I've really had this incredible opportunity to work at a brand or a company that had a brand like ABCmouse, which has been completely transformative. There was no paid children's education product before ABC Mouse. And the team had already had a lot of success and was starting to scale. I was the first external management hire to that team. And my responsibility, unsurprisingly, was like helping figure out the mobile strategy and the go-to-market and how we really scale that. And that quickly evolved because beyond ABC Mouse and mobile, the vision for the company was how do we solve larger problems. So ABC Mouse is super successful. 50 million kids have used it around the world, huge trust with parents. And yet, Doug was like, that's great, but we have a real shortcoming in the US. And what does that mean to all these kids that don't have access to the platform? And what can we do? And so, from a backward solving perspective, he was like, our kids, the US, all these kids in the US are not getting to proficiency in math and reading. Um, Sunil, can you help me pull together a team and solve this? And I was chief strategy officer at the time. I was asked to bring together a team. I had no idea how to do this, by the way. So the lucky thing I was that I was given an opportunity to hire people a lot smarter than me in subjects, or in areas like cognitive science. I was able to get multiple PhDs like KP Tai and Diana Hughes. Diana came from Serious Gaming. I didn't know what Serious Gaming was until Diana joined our team. And the fact that, looking at games as a way to deliver outcomes and how that was already being done by the military. We brought in Liz Owen. Liz was, she was one of the hardest people to recruit, but she came in with how games can be used as assessment vehicles. And so we started building this all-star team that really understood learning from the aspect of children's development, understood it from of how we use games to assess and to teach, as well as how do we put in the data science and the pedagogical soundness in creating products that were really going to make a difference. So we had this incredible research basis, but you fast forward to today, and not only do we have multiple patents on the platform we build, we have two products, My Math and My Reading Academy, that have been successfully incorporated into a business we have in school with schools, with 25 efficacy studies on its effectiveness. So we're moving the needle. And so we started from, hey, we want to be research based, but evidence proven. And I feel like that's where we are now. I spend most of my time in the market, really looking at how do we take evidence-based approaches to the next level to ensure that states look for evidence and make that a core priority when they're selecting products, and districts are as well, and really kind of spreading that message on we need evidence to really drive the transformation that we're all looking for in education.
Sunil, you have touched on some of my favorite topics, but we'll get to them in a second. I just have to note here that as I'm listening to you, you so often don't associate folks that are like heads down on finance, the way you started your career, with this like big scale creativity. What do you think that makes you unique in that way that you became this almost, I mean, you're the chief innovation officer, right? But almost like an inventor and a someone who went out there and figured out what the market needed that it didn't have.
It's funny because I think I live in the world where I always feel like I'm an imposter and I don't belong here, given where
I
I
don't
train.
think you could say that anymore. Maybe in the beginning, but not anymore.
Thank you for saying that. It's still hard, right? I am curious about how things work, and I'm curious about how to fix things, and
There it
uh,
is.
and I think that you look at it from like the systems aspect of things is really compelling. And my most recent work at Age of Learning is just now that I'm working in the policy side of things, talking to state legislators, and so connecting the dots between what what has purpose and impact, along with why somebody's going to pay for it, and then why somebody's going to use it, and creating that virtuous cycle is like really compelling to me. It's exciting, it's problem solving, it's a great creative endeavor, and one that is practiced so much better when you have a lot of people who are also very smart trying to do the same thing and getting a lot of points of view, and kind of muddling your way through to get to the right result.
I think that's it. So the value of curiosity is one that I think there's two values that I want my own kids to have. One is curiosity and one is empathy. So I want them to be curious about the world around them and I want them to care about the world around them. So thank you for validating my own parenting strategy.
100%. And I think that, and the other thing I think you should tell your kids is, just because something's a problem now does not mean you can't unstick that problem and that you can make it better.
Right.
And the tools we have now to do that have never been better, or more enabling. It so have something you care about and go after it. And that's what I try to tell my own kids as well. There's a lot to be disappointed about in
Mm,
terms of what adults are doing today. But there's no reason that our youth and can't fix it. And we can't fix it because we
right.
we have to.
Yeah, no, thank you for adding that on there. So now to dive back in, I appreciate that you said that there is a play here for the finance background, obviously. You can analyze the market, you can see what gaps there are, you can develop strategy based on trends. Let's talk though about what you've built here at Age of Learning and how you've measured its impact. Research based. What was the term you used? Can you repeat it for me? Was it you said we're research based and
Evidence proven.
evidence proven. I love that. That is obviously something that I care deeply about. I've interviewed many folks who also care deeply about this topic. How did that become central to the work, and how is it driving the organization forward in supporting schools today?
In your podcast with Jeff Livingston, which it really impacted me. Jeff's story and what he talked about, the foundation, and one of the things he talked about where education was the foundation of economic mobility, and really early learning is the cornerstone. And that's why we, with our products, My Math and My Reading Academy, have focused on early learning, because we're seeing by fourth grade so many kids who are disengaged, and we know that that impact is very large. And if you think about how, or the so that's why we started at the beginning at Age of Learning. That so with no knowledge to where a student can get to in terms of not only being proficient, but identifying as a learner, and creating a system that would really produce the results. And results for the student, the teacher, and the parent. So we also looked at things in terms of an ecosystem, and learning has to be thought that way. Learning is not limited to the four walls of a classroom and what you do at school. You have to enable all the individuals involved. That includes the student themselves, the affect of your solution on what they feel about their ability, their learning, how they learn. And part of this goes back to the research basis. We very tightly looked at things like Vygotsky and the idea of zone of proximal development. So with our system, we built something where we assess a child not because we want to compare them to someone else, but we want to know what prior knowledge they bring into the learning environment or their learning. We then offer them something that is at the level they're ready to learn next. We never tell them that they're wrong. Every mistake they make is a opportunity to learn. We add not only instruction but scaffolding just in time. So a lot of people are talking about Bloom now, and the idea of mastery-based learning and Two Sigma. But the reality is that takes, to replicate what a tutor does in one-to-one is not only instruction, but it's feedback. And so we incorporate into our system just-in-time feedback. And that feedback is very positively oriented towards, hey, you've made an error, but let's try to get you through why you made that error. Let's look at what you already know based on where you are in the system and use that as a strategy so you can work through that yourself. What we've seen and what we hear back from teachers is that this system is not only effective in terms of the research we've done to show the impact, we're also hearing from them that it is actually helping students identify as readers and mathematicians, and that they have increased confidence and increased engagement in what they're learning. And look, that to me is a dual track to really pushing better results. It's something that super proud of. And as we think about how we push that forward, it is, at the policy level, and you talked about my finance background, it's like, policymakers want to see across states want to see success for the populace. They know the importance of human capital. The, are they making the right, and they're making huge investments in it, but are those the right investments? And how do they direct the right investments? And that's where the evidence comes back in, Haley. That's where we can go in and say, here are 12 different studies on my reading academy, for example, that will show you that this is going to make a difference in your classroom. Teachers are going to want this product in your classroom, and you're making an investment that's going to move the needle for your most important resource, which is, your people. So let's align on that and find a way to make this available to more of your students.
You know, you've mentioned a lot of things that have been kind of first in market. And I think that the approach that Age of Learning is taking is not necessarily first in market, but it's also loud in market in terms of embracing this research-based black background. I know from my prior to this interview, the research that I conducted, that you are also thinking very cogently about AI and how that's changing the landscape. Can you talk a little bit about how the team has embraced artificial intelligence and what you think is coming next in terms of product development and products, product development?
Yeah, AI is pervasive at Age of Learning now in terms of how we are thinking about it from a development perspective. Everything we're looking to do, whether it be for ABCmouse, for my Math Academy, for my Reading Academy. We also have a product for English language learners, my Reading Academy Espanol. We're accelerating development and testing and feedback loops so that we get more product in the market. We're also excited about what it can do in terms of transforming the way data is presented to teachers and parents in a way that is a lot. It takes a lot of the guesswork out of it for teachers. It's more applicable quickly in the classroom. And then further, as we think about what the landscape here in the US is with all the multilingual learners, is like how do our products provide better support to these multi-language learners in their classroom. So one of the things that we'll be rolling out next year is multi-language learner support 50 plus languages. So, and that will be in my reading academy, which that's a game changer. We could not have done that before.
Totally. Totally. It's one use case that is so obvious and can up level a lot of the tools on the market right now. I'm glad to hear it's being embraced because, I work at Full Mind, we work in some districts where they have so many, before AI really became pervasive, they had so many students who couldn't really interact, and families that couldn't interact in a meaningful way because they simply couldn't find translators to support learning in the classrooms and around the school. That is very, very exciting. Sunil, I think a lot about people and their development and the products or tools or services that they stand behind. You obviously have shared a lot of love for your path here at Age of Learning. Can you talk a little bit about what else you're doing and why that matters to you? For example, you were recently appointed to the board of Innovate EDU. And that's something that when I talk to you about it, you light up. You're excited by this work. What's happening? I mean, I'm sure our listeners know about Innovate EDU, but what's happening there that has you most excited, and why did you join the board?
What excites me about the work at Innovate EDU is the ability for that organization to take on the really tough conversations that we need to have now in a very divided climate where we have this new what Aaron Moat, the CEO, calls arrival technology, which is changing not only how we live but how we work and how we learn at really quick pace. I think beyond most of our ability to grok in terms of what is going to be the impact, from a workforce perspective, and an education perspective, and the ability of that organization to bring together coalitions across school leaders, across the industry, and across policymakers and policy organizations is really quite unique. And so lending my help, or certainly some guidance and feedback in terms of how we best navigate that the the difficult space we're in right now politically to get to the results that are going to make a difference, for the US's biggest resource, which is our people, and how do we ensure that we arrive in a very safe and accountable way, and also from a learning perspective, let's double down on this idea that we can do this in a way that is uh, has as measurement in terms of what works. There's a lot of product in the market uh, that promises uh, more than it's shown that it actually can deliver yet from a scientific evidence perspective. And we need to separate that. We need to ensure that the systems or the public infrastructure exists to quickly bring in this technology, or the technology is going to be brought in regardless, but can we create the public infrastructure so that it's being brought in a way that benefits the most humans we can, regardless of their socioeconomic status.
You speak really eloquently about this work and how transformative it has been already. What I think is really unique about RN and Innovate EDU, as you said, is that it's trying to navigate a very challenging federal environment, which has left schools, vendors, families just confused about what comes next. And if you are an avid follower of Erin, like I am on LinkedIn, you'll see that she navigates that with grace, which I think is really challenging to do here. And she keeps her kind of attitude forward thinking and how we can continue to evolve, as we need to support learners across the US.
It gives me optimism, right? And I think it should give us all optimism in terms of there's a lot that separates us, but I do believe that what brings us together is that real core focus on our children and the future we want for them. As you talked about, Haley, what do you want for your children, and how do we provide that to all parents? And we have technology that can really help us do this better, and we need to find a way to embrace it in a way that serves equity as well as outcome.
Well said. So, Neil, I'm wondering, I typically ask folks at the end of our interview what advice they'd give a teacher starting their career. And I do have that question for you, but I also have a question for you about what advice you would give someone who's entering the education space, maybe someone who came from a different sector but is coming toward education. You obviously speak with a lot of knowledge and understanding that, is hard to acquire. It takes time. So I guess I'll start with that one. What advice would you give someone who's joining the education sector from a different sector, in order to really dig themselves in and make an impact?
Yeah, and this has been more clear to me over the last 12 years with what we've done at Age of Learning and how we focus in the beginning with backward design thinking, the idea of we're going to work behind backwards from the outcome we want to achieve. You need to identify what your theory of change, theory of action is. Don't start with I have a great product that's going to do X. Start with, this is a problem I've identified, and this is how I support those, whether that be a student, parent, teacher, in solving that problem. So it doesn't matter if you're doing it for the consumer market or the uh, schools market or the adult market for that matter. If you're serving workforce or higher ed, start with what outcome you want for anyone that touches your product, and then work backwards towards, all right, how do I go about solving that? What does already exist? What is, from a research perspective, is out there that is, and what else, what are other people doing about this? And why is that problem exist still? And how is my solution going to be better? And then work towards getting that feedback on a regular basis from, if you're in the schools market, not only students, but teachers, and parents. Like, that co-design element, I think, is going to be even more critical going forward. Don't assume you know what other people need until you ask them.
Ooh, that is like a mic drop right there. I love that. Sunil, I am so grateful that we've been connected. I am beyond honored you spent your time with us today. This has been a really powerful episode, and you really walk the walk. So thank you for being a leader in this space with really driving change for kids.
I appreciate it, and I really appreciate what you do to elevate voices out there that are doing good work. Appreciate it, Ellie. Thank you.
Thank, thank you for saying that. And thank you to everybody who tuned in today. Thanks for listening to the Learning Can't Wait podcast. If you like what you heard, please rate, review, and share this episode. Be the first to know when we have a new episode by subscribing wherever you listen to podcasts. If you'd like to be a guest on the show or have a suggestion for an episode, email us at podcast@fullmindlearning.com.